Hey everyone.
Hello.
We're back. And sooner than you expected.
Right?
Because we decided to do a second video right after doing the previous one. And at the end of the previous one, we ended up talking about the interplay and interdependence perhaps between surface, the sensation of surface type experiences that we have, which I think are myriad in our culture and world, and the relatively rare ones, which are the depth oriented experiences of things like soul or spirit. And I think what we were getting to is a sense for the interdependence of the two, despite the fact that I think in many ways our world is a little out of balance in terms of inviting us always to play over the surface. I think a lot of celebrity phenomena are like that. It's not just in politics.
Yeah. Well, it's the general entertainment value of life that we engineer into daily living that helps perpetuate our staying on the surface of life.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And
Are you not entertained? That was from the movie Gladiator.
yeah.
So there's nothing new in a way.
Yeah.
Panem et circenses. That's how we used to say it in Latin class. Like the way you keep your population pacified is by
Entertaining.
offering them bread. Panem is bread, and circenses means circuses.
If there would not be the circus and the Colosseum and the other, if that was not a true phenomenon.
Yeah.
And there are good examples today, like my love of books.
Oh yeah, he's a big bibliophile, people. Like he is a massive, in this case literally massive because his collection weighs a lot. A bibliophile.
That's enough, Eric.
Okay.
But you get the point. I love books, but I find myself sometimes wanting nothing more than to read a book, and after a few minutes I might see a phrase or see another writer mentioned in it or a reference to something else, and I'll use my computer to find that because I'm interested to make the connection and see what the backstory is on this. And then I end up looking at videos about that rather than going back to the book, because it's a lot easier to just sit there mindlessly watching videos about this off-topic thing.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm sort of reacting against the word mindlessly. I think that there's a mode of thinking going on there. I think what you're doing is sort of following the Ariadne's thread of your curiosity, really. And there's a kind of intelligence there, and I don't think it's mindless at all.
But
it's maybe a little more diffusely focused than what you want to do.
I'm easily distracted with that endeavor, rather than being able to pull myself away and come back and staying on where I was in the depth of this literary work that I'm in.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
And I'm trying to make the analogy between the depth of that and the superficiality is still not the good word for it, but it's there's less involved. I'm passively involved in watching this video in a way.
Yeah.
And I have more active involvement in building the world of the words on that page when I'm reading the book.
Yeah, but I think part of what you're saying also, Mark, is that the world in which we live, which is to say the 21st century, very technological world, really pulls at us with respect to skipping over surfaces.
Yeah.
And it makes it like really difficult in a way to have a depth-oriented, like reading Moby Dick, which is a very long book if you haven't read it. It's 800 and some pages.
War and Peace.
Yeah, like that sort of depth-oriented, you're going to have to hang with this probably for the next month type sense of temporality is part of what it's about.
But we have engineered and constructed all of these ways of making our life more convenient and comfortable, and helping us to be more expeditious in the doing of our living every day. But the very constructs that we've made are some of the things that are holding us back from going into the depth, because they propel us forward on the surface. Our automobiles, the fast food window at the drive-thru, We don't even have to prepare food anymore if we don't want to. And and to me, it's more about the actual speed at which we take up life during the day that is a hindrance to going into the depths of living.
So to me, one of probably the most interesting part of this question has to do with the transition. All right. So the question there is like, if what you're saying is true, and I agree that it is to a large extent, how do we ever then make a transition between skipping over surfaces, going fast food, internet, not reading Moby Dick, and so on, to a depth-oriented experience? And because it's running against the grain, like how does that ever happen? And I think that part of how it happens, at least in my own life, is sometimes I just get sick of how shallow everything feels.
Yeah.
You know, like you just get sort of fed up with it, like get fed up with the fast food, you know, and you're like, well, damn, I think I need to have something on the other side of the scale somehow in one way or another. And so I think that part of how it happens is like just, you got to get down with the sickness. You know what I'm
You
saying?
have to. Well, don't you think you have to have some intention? to
Not
do that?
necessarily.
No.
I don't think so. I mean, it can play out that way, obviously, but I think a lot of the time, you know, we don't even know that we're sort of sick and
Yeah.
hungry, and it
Yeah.
just sort of
Yeah.
comes to us unbidden, like a weird sort of guest that knocks on our house, and the guest comes in and says, like, is this all that there is to your life?
this-
Is
is
this
this
it?
it?
Is this
Yeah.
it? Like the next TV show, the next binge watch, the next fast food? You
Well,
know?
when you say house, see that it's even in our vernacular, because there's a phrase in the popular vocabulary, McMansion, some
yeah.
years ago. So so there's an association, even if you don't understand what you're really getting at, of equating this fast food mentality with these cookie cutter mansions built one on top of the other in these subdivisions that are manicured and stay
Yeah.
off the grass. And
Yeah, well, it's one thing to eat a burger, it's another to inhabit a dwelling based upon the same principle as the burger. But I think it goes even further, Mark. I've heard people talk about McWorld.
really,
Yeah, we live in McWorld. And sort of what they mean by that is a sort of leveling down.
Yeah.
What used to be the great variety of different cultures and lands, and now everyone knows who Madonna is across the globe, and everyone knows who Shaquille O'Neal is
Yeah.
across the globe, and everyone sort of, you know, and sort of we're all in a weird way on the same page, which is, you know, it has its advantages, but it also has its disadvantages. And one of the disadvantages is that the variety of life is sort of narrowed down by that, like the variety of human possibilities, and I think it eventuates in sort of a world state where everyone's supposed to be on the same page, which is where we started the previous video.
Yeah.
Like the kind of automaticity that everyone's supposed to worship the same gods and have the same values, and if you deviate, you're committing a hate crime or some damn
Yeah.
thing, you know?
it's an assault against your culture if you don't follow along and
yeah.
fall in line.
Yeah, well, not only against your culture, because the idea of McWorld is that, well, the whole world is turning out that way. So not only is it an assault against your culture, it's an assault against this sort of how do they say, new order?
Yeah, the
Great-
New World Order.
New World Order, that's it.
So there's, I think it was Tom Nichols that's written a book recently, and I believe the title is "The Death of Expertise." And he generally what he's talking about is how we have virtually every fact in the whole world at our fingertips if we have a computer and we have online access. Just in a matter of moments, we can Google anything and find out these little superficial facts. You can get factual information about it, but that doesn't give you the depth of knowledge and understanding and wisdom that comes from sitting with this information and being like spending years becoming an expert in a particular field of endeavor. And then there are, I'll refer back to the previous video about the State of the Union, people that have absolutely no depth of understanding of world affairs, current events, domestic affairs, economic affairs, have these grandiose. They've read a little Marxist, literature. They've read a little bit of some Ronald Reagan's biography. They've read something from Mao. They've read these snippets of things, and they've gone to rallies and gone to meetings and put these things together. So they have this little veneer of that appears to be substantial, but it's only a veneer. And everybody can say, oh, well, I read or I saw, and the anti-vaccinators and the all these, pick any group that you want to pick, and there's this like trend to discount real expertise because of our ability to instantly have almost any fact at our fingertips.
Yeah, and I think part of what's happening with all of that is that most of us don't have the time and the energy to be able to distinguish between a genuine expert and a self-opinionated noob who's falling prey to the Dunning-Kruger effect. So the Dunning-Kruger effect is that, when people initially get involved in something, very often their confidence is way higher than their actual expertise would warrant. And I think that the reason why the Dunning-Kruger effect, more people know about it, and it's becoming sort of part of popular discourse, is because it's becoming sort of the operative principle a lot of the time. And I think the reason for that is because most of us, as we go through our lives, we don't have time to sort of do enough learning and research and depth-oriented dwelling in order to even arrive at the place where we can tell the person at that sort of spike on the curve for the Dunning-Kruger effect kind of rises really high in terms of confidence. Okay, so confidence, the y-axis is expertise, x-axis is confidence. So, or no, it's the other way around.
The other way around.
Yeah, so confidence goes really high, and then like it slopes off and then starts going like that is the curve for that. So that was probably a waste of time. We might edit that one out.
Correction.
But, yeah. Plus, it's probably boring to most of the audience. But anyhow, I'm sorry if I bored you and we didn't edit it out. But the point is that, okay, what's the point? The point is that in a culture like ours, it becomes very difficult in an everyday way for you or myself or whoever to know who's an expert and who is just sort of a self-opinionated noob who's at that spiky part of the Dunning-Kruger effect curve.
Well, which is, and I'll give you another example of that in the real world, is you have Fox News, which is, it's like a dichotomy. It's like the Fox News over here, CNN over here, or and some others in between or on the ends themselves. And it perpetuates division.
Yeah.
But it gives us these easily digestible sound bites of highlights and headlines and dramatized happenings, so that we don't have to think, we don't have to go into the depth. We can stay in this veneer up here of seeming to know. This is I think I've mentioned this before in a previous video, but one of the things that annoys me most, even just looking online, is when one of these websites will say, like CNN or Fox or any of them, 10 things you need to know today.
Yeah.
Who are you to tell me? You don't even you have no idea who I am, but you're going to tell me what I need to know today.
Well, you have to engage your psychologist's ear at that point, your therapist's ear, and what the therapist's ear will tell you is that the people who write that are hoping that you will regard it as a truth, that you need to know these things. It's not that you need to know them. They're hoping that you will think of yourself as the person who needs to know them.
Yeah.
That's what's really going on.
And that's another example of what you're talking about with. But all these things tend to keep us apart and continue to separate us. It has the effect of separation. It also has the effect of keeping keeping us on this, making it easy for us to stay on the surface,
Yeah, I think that's definitely true.
which is it. There's efficacy to that. It's beneficial. The surface is beneficial, but the depth is also beneficial.
Right. And
And-
we ignore one at our peril. Like if we were to go the other way and say, well, I'm only going to stay with what seems really deep and profound and so on and so forth, well, then you're missing the whole other side of life,
Yeah.
which is, to be momentarily entertained, to have a vacation, to have a break, to know things in a superficial way, but to know a lot of them. And there's a value to that too.
Yeah, because otherwise you're cloistered.
Yeah, you
And-
end up in this kind of insular
Yeah.
condition, and
And-
okay, time and a place for that. I get that, but
Yeah.
time and a place for the opposite of that too.
So, I guess that was the rant that we wanted to follow up with from
Yes.
the previous video.
Yes, this is maybe this is a rant video. I don't know. I think we're allowed to rant. I think the universe is big enough for that.
Yeah.
To hold
So,
a rant.
take what you like, discard the rest, and hopefully come back next time, I guess.
Come as you are, as you were, as I wanted you to be.
Thanks for watching.
Take care. Bye bye.